Welcome to Soltron. This is the video review for Miniforce, Dinoid Warrior, Dino Emperor. And here he is with the other Miniforce figures. Yeah, he's just bigger than everybody. Even Justice Titan, which is a huge robot, he even dwarfs Justice Titan with his wingspan and then these giant legs. So he even has more bulk than that robot. And here he is with Sentai and Metal Cardbot. So you can see he dwarfs those as well. And here he is with Transformers. So he is actually smaller than a Titan class robot. Even a small Titan class would be bigger than this guy. So there are some bigger robots. Alright, but his box is bigger than a Titan class figure. So his box is enormous. You got this great artwork on it. Here's the side view of some of that artwork. And you can see he does have like the arm limb swapping gimmick, but they are too small on this figure because he's enormous. And then you can display it this way as well, which is the same artwork, I think. Nope, it is different. So he's in a different pose. He's doing like a reaching, attacking, spearing pose with his shield. And then you got the group all there. And the box is really weird. It actually... Alright, we'll just get that out of the way. It actually has like that shiny foil insert, even though there's no window. And it does have a clamshell inside that holds the figure. So it's a really weird choice. I don't know why they didn't make... If you're going to do that, I don't know why you don't make like an opening panel so you can look inside. And then it is gigantic, so it does come with a carrying handle because it is as large as a piece of luggage. And here are the instructions. They're also a large manual, and it just shows you, of course, just the basics. Nothing interesting in there, no real artwork or anything. And then you get those limb swapping gimmicks that you can do, and then everything that's included. And let's just get it out of the way. Yes, you can do the limb swapping. I think these giant arms actually look pretty cool on the Rex Kaiser, but he does become side heavy, if that's a thing. So that's pretty interesting. And then Justice Titan, of course, is in proportion, so his limbs don't look out of place at all if you swap them. And then if you put the helicopter on this arm, that looks okay too. If you do that Helicoprion, I don't know, that swordfish looking one on this arm, it is too small. It doesn't quite look as good as his original limbs. There's just no limb that's as good as that one. Alright, moving this guy's around is kind of awkward, but as far as accessories, he does have this tail sword, which is pretty typical dinosaur weapon. So it looks okay. It's actually pretty hefty. I wish it would have opened up and a blade would come out or something. It definitely needed to do some kind of transforming. All it does is the hilt folds up, so that's kind of lazy, I'll be honest. It needed to do like one thing at least. And then he's got this shield spear kind of weapon, which is also just the tail pointing down. So this weapon's also, I'll say, pretty lazy, this accessory. So it's just like this whole back of the Demetradon, except for this. The fin folds up, which is cool. But again, the tail should have just like split open and become like the bottom part of the shield, I think would have been very cool. Made like a kite shield kind of shape. And then of course he comes with his metal coin, nice and hefty. I think this symbol is, yeah, this symbol is actually different than the standard one, so that's interesting. But you get his head sculpt there. And then that's just held in with friction right here. So those are his accessories. Yeah, it would have been nice if this tail did something, like maybe a spear came out of it or it extended or something. It's just, it's very underwhelming. And then as far as his art, oh yeah, I forgot to go over like his head sculpt. Let's take a look at that. So its head sculpt is of course excellent. I think Miniforce always nails the head sculpts. It looks just so detailed and magnificent with the black and gold. He's got kind of a T-Rex kind of head going, but he's got like this fluting right here and these ear crests, and then of course the masked face. Just really impressive head sculpt. I'm surprised they didn't give him a crown or something, but this is good enough. It's a very good head sculpt. And of course, so that's on a nice ball joint. The shoulder pads can actually articulate up if you want to give him kind of a more aggressive looking shoulder pads. He does have nice spring ratchets all the way there. He does have ratcheted biceps. He does have ratcheted elbows. Unfortunately, his elbows don't have the double joint, which is too bad, but they do have this nice filler piece here so that his arms aren't looking too awkward. You do have a ball joint wrist, so you can get all that articulation as well. And then you do have all finger articulation. Ball joint thumb, which is very useful, except for when it pops out of joint. And then you do have the fingers, which are all always bent. You can't have him point a finger. It's just not going to work. And then here's his thumb, which is also bent. And that just pops into this joint here. So that's kind of annoying, is the thumb does tend to pop out of joint on both hands. But you can get him to kind of do like a reaching kind of pose, I guess. He does have waist articulation here. So he's got like, but it only turns that much, so almost nothing. That's a bit of a cheat right there. It is locked in place. Actually, I think it's because the Pterodactyl on his back. And then he does have these ball joint, or no, these universal hips. So you got to get the hip skirt out of the way, but he does have the full forward or full side kick. He's got most of a front kick, like 45 degrees. So not really most. Actually, maybe closer to 30 degrees because of this hip skirt, but you can untransform this and move it to the back of his body, which will release that, but then you also have to take off his wing pack. So maybe I'll show that off. And then he does have thigh rotation, also on nice ratchets. And then his knees are 90 degrees exactly. And then finally, he's getting a little heavy. He does have ankle articulation, which is not very much, but enough that you can get an A stance out of him. And yeah, posing this guy, because of the density of the plastic, does start becoming a pain, but he can pull off some pretty good poses. I forgot to do a 360 on this guy, so let's take a look at him on the turntable. And you can see he looks great from every angle. He doesn't have a bad angle. Even though the side is kind of busy looking, it still looks good. The back looks amazing. It's nice and clean. Everything's filled in. He's got a lot of robotic detail, but it doesn't get like overwhelming. All the surfaces are still nice and smooth and premium looking. He doesn't have just like a lot of extra greebling. So he's still very clean looking. And then they give him a lot of the decoration in his chest and thighs. But everything just comes together so nicely on this figure. He is probably one of the best Power Ranger figures in a long time. And of course, Sentai went in a totally different direction. But if they had continued going with like Don Oni Taijin, we might have got figures like this. So you can get some like decent fighting poses, but his legs are really where you're going to struggle because the hip pieces just kind of get in the way. So we'll do some more poses like after I get some of his pieces off, but we'll just go ahead and get these accessories. And then we'll just start transforming him. So the Pteranodon is or Pterodactyl maybe, is a little bit annoying. It's only held on by one clip, which is right here, which is ridiculous. Because this thing is enormous. It's got a wingspan of probably 15 inches. It's just a huge robot in its own right. And for it to only be held on by this one clip is just not a good idea. That was a really bad plan. I don't know what they were thinking with that. But anyway, now that that's out of the way, we can open up these hip ab sections. So we can rotate those to the back. And that will unlock a lot of his posing. So now he can do like a high front kick like this, which is pretty crazy for a robot this size. So now we can start playing around with some good posing. Okay, that looks a little bit more dynamic. So now that the Pterodactyl is not on his back, he can also rotate his midsection more, so we can get full on this kind of pose. So now he's got a lot more posing options now that this huge hip section isn't in the way. If I decide to keep this figure, I'll probably just cut off some of this just so he can have this without having to untransform his whole ab section right here. But yeah, it's just these black bits that kind of get in the way. So if those were just cut down a little bit, that would help out. All right, so the next thing we'll do is we'll just take off his arms. That's very simple. It uses that same combining kind of rail system, which has been working out pretty nicely. So that's pretty durable. So you get the Triceratops, you get the rest of the Demetradon body. And then a really interesting transformation. So there is some parts forming, unfortunately. You do have to take the Brachiosaurus's head from the knee section here. And then you do have to take the tail from the other knee section. So those clip on. And then you get like his basic legs. And then these legs are the Brachiosaurus's body. So you do have to pull these off as well. And these are clipped in pretty nicely, but there's like a little indent right there, and there's like little spring-loaded tabs right there, and that's how it all holds in place. And you can see it basically just becomes a giant boot. And then when you take those all off, you get this weird looking kind of T-Rex looking robot. So this is kind of what you get just from the T-Rex himself. And the T-Rex makes up a huge chunk of the body just by itself. And then to transform that, we're just going to lift the head here, and that's going to go into the jaw. And the interesting thing about the T-Rex head is it's got this hollow divot. So the pterodactyl head actually fits in there for the robot mode. And then for the T-Rex mode, the crest of the robot head fits in there, so that's pretty cool. And then you're going to use like this double joint right here, and that's going to unlock his neck. And then you can open his jaw here. And then his teeny, pathetic little T-Rex arms are here. Like, they could have handled this a little bit better. This is pretty exaggerated and stupid, but that's fine. And then you're going to rotate those ab sections up and out of the way. And then you just rotate the legs down. And then you basically just collapse this whole leg here. You use kind of the chicken joint looking thing. So you get this kind of looking leg. So now you have this like looking T-Rex, and he is pretty front heavy, so you do have to position the legs. And you do have to like bend these backward knee joints to get everything in the right place. And then you take the sword, you're going to rotate that around and get this clip section. And of course, we know where that's going to go right here. And that's going to provide a little bit of counterbalance, but you still got to kind of work with him on getting his legs in the right place. But I think that's kind of normal for a T-Rex robot. They're all kind of like awkward to balance on their two legs. All right, and there's the T-Rex, more or less. I think he's supposed to be straight across, more like a raptor instead of up, because his head cannot look down, unfortunately, which is kind of annoying, actually. I'll be honest. That's a pretty bad oversight. His head should be able to look down, especially because he's so enormous. And then he's got an opening jaw with kind of tongue detail inside, so that's very cool. He has all that leg articulation, so he can do this. He can do outward motion. He's got his regular knee, and then he's got this extra backward knee. And then he does have the ankle tilt as well. And he's got an ankle tilt forward and backwards as well, or ankle pitch, I guess. So you can get like potentially a running pose out of him. You can get something like that going. Let's have his mouth open. So he can look like he's doing something active. So he's got more posability than you'd usually get out of a T-Rex robot. And I guess you could kind of do the kaiju thing, but then he's going to be stuck looking up. So this does not quite work, unfortunately. If he could look down, he would definitely pull this off. Oh, and then of course you have his waist swivel too. So it's nice that they work that in. All right, let's go to the Pterodactyl. This guy's already pretty much transformed. You just have to fold down the wingtips and then just extend out the feet. These look like they're on ratchets, but they don't actually make any noise. And then you're going to, let's see, you have to move the wings out of the way, and that will let you access these hips so that these hips can move. And then you can extend the neck, and then you can get a full downward motion. This guy also has opening jaws, so very nice. Love that. So you get your basic Pterodactyl robot. He's not going to have a lot of articulation, but he does have these wingtips, and then he does have these shoulder joints as well. So you can get him to kind of walk on all fours. Oh, and I forgot his little talons you have to deploy from up here. So you can kind of get him to walk on all fours or whatever they have to do. I guess technically his wings would be like down here maybe. There you go. So there's a walking pose for him, and he can walk on all fours. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, you can get some good like flying poses, I guess, since his wings fold up. His wings actually don't fold upward though. Like these joints do, but these ones don't, which is annoying. These only fold down. So that's kind of annoying in the robot mode too, that the wings can't fold backwards. They can only fold backward here, but not here. They disabled that for some reason. And then you can just fold the wings in. I think you're supposed to for robot mode just to give it more stability. But it's cool to have the wings out so they have some articulation. So you can do the flapping motion with this guy. All right, and then for the Demetradon, you're going to just take the coin and you're going to relocate it to this middle section. You're just going to fold that up. And of course, that lets you see both sides of the coin. Very cool. And then you just fold out the legs here. The feet are just pegged into the back of the hips. And then you can rotate the hips a little bit to get something a little bit more dynamic looking. There's the back half. And then the front half, you're just going to fold in the thumb, the fingers, and then you fold this around, and there's the combiner joint is behind his head. I'm just going to fold that, and then you collapse all this down. And then you're going to, same thing, unpeg these feet. And then he has a shoulder joint here and another joint here to make his legs stick out a little bit more. Like they could have just did this, which looks fine, but I like that they gave him another joint right here to make this look a little bit more like further away from his body to give him more of a dinosaur or lizard kind of look. And then you just peg this whole section onto the top here. The fist is kind of hidden by this tail section. And there's the Demetradon, and he's pretty cool. And he can, of course, open his mouth. And he's got some very limited leg articulation. He can move his legs outward a little bit if you need to, inward. And then the back legs can pivot on basically all these joints. So you can show him slowly walking away on his belly. Okay, Triceratops is also very easy. You're just going to fold the fist, fold the tail over the fist to hide it. That's not looking right. You might have to work with the thumb a little bit just to get it out of the way. I like having the back of the fist exposed because it looks better. And then you just rotate the arm, same thing as the Demetradon. And then these weird puzzle pieces here are kind of the complicated part. You're going to unfold the back leg like this, and then you take this piece, which covers up the top of the back leg, and then you're just going to get these paws and fold them out, and then you just rotate the whole leg around. And then it's got this hole here, this peg right here, it's meant to peg in there, and then there's basically the Triceratops. And I also figured out if you open the fingers, it actually cleans this up a little bit better. You have the thumb right there, but that's fine. And the Triceratops also has opening mouth. He doesn't have any head articulation except for up and down. So I guess he's got some, I shouldn't say none. And he can do this stupid articulation if that's something that's useful. And then he can like stamp his feet. These ones are pegged into place so he can't rotate at the shoulder unless you unpeg it, and then it's kind of awkward looking. And then he does have foot articulation for all of his feet. And then this one can also rotate because of transformation. All right, and then the last part, the Brontosaurus. So to get the tail ready, you're just going to fold out these connection tabs, and you do the same thing for the head. That's going to end up in this position. And then the legs, both of these feet are actually asymmetrical, so they both transform in a different way. So this one is the one that does basically nothing. It just becomes the front half right there. It does fold up there, but now that's the front half of the dinosaur. Oh, and you want to hide this gap right here, so this actually just folds down like this. And then you go ahead and you peg the head onto the top section. I thought. Yeah, that should be right. So that's the front half, and then the back half is going to look like this kind of thing. These legs fold down. These legs don't individually articulate, they're joined right here, but they all fold down here. And then there's this connection joint. This was actually supposed to be hidden away, but you fold this here, and that's what's going to connect the two halves. And these are on wheels, so even though the legs don't articulate, at least he can roll around, so that's not the worst thing. And then you take, of course, the tail section. You're going to peg that in back here. Maybe. All right, that was oddly difficult, but there you go. Here's the Brontosaurus, who's very big. He's got no articulation. Well, I guess you can count this as articulation and this, but that's it. He's just here to roll around. He's not going to be doing anything else. And he actually looks pretty good considering how he's made of 2 boots. So surprising how he comes together. Oh, I guess because of the ankle articulation, he can do this. If that's like a useful piece of articulation, it's not. All right, and here's a group shot of these dinosaurs, and they are very large. So we can pull in Rex Kaiser, and you can see the T-Rex is about the same size as Rex Kaiser himself. So just the T-Rex component is as big as this kaiju there. And then of course the Dino Emperor T-Rex looks about 1,000 times better, but I guess this guy's not meant to be a T-Rex. He's meant to be something else. I don't know. And we can compare them to the Justice Titan robots. So maybe just rearrange these a little bit. You can see here's the Justice Titan car is completely dwarfed by the smallest robot, which is the Triceratops. Is still much larger than this car. I wonder if they scale together. Probably not, because a Demetradon I think is not that big. But and then a helicopter. So yeah, that's this whole set. So if you can afford it, I highly recommend this set. I think these robots will be highly sought after. They're just very good. It's maybe the individual robots, the individual dinosaurs don't have articulation, but the combination is just so good, and it's so pleasant and fun to put together. And it's not too complicated, but everything does do a good job of transforming, except for the Pterodactyl. He doesn't do basically anything. But yeah, it's just a great set. So I got this on Gmarket for about $167, and then I had to pay $35 in tariffs. So I got him for about $200. I don't think you can get a robot that's this big and chunky and full of springs and ratchets and quality. I don't think you can get a robot this big for $200. I think that's actually a decent deal. I would have preferred paying $160 like I did with Justice Titan, but I think that's just the way things are now. This robot is basically premium. $200 is not a lot to ask for something that's this gigantic and this well made. So highly recommend if you can get it. And that's about it. See you in the next one.